Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. And our current briefing is very important for the south of Ukraine because the city has been constantly shelled by Russia. And today we are going to discuss the results of that shelling, consequences with regard to landmarks and houses and to the cathedral in the center of the city. Our speakers are Svitlana Zhekova, director of the House of Scientists. She is with us online. We also have the head of Odesa Oblast Trade Union Organization, Lyubov Kornichuk. She is also online. Maximian Pogorelovsky, Archpriest, Odessa Diocese of Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Natalia Lavrova, tourist guide. And Eleonora Karpach, the resident of Odessa, who helped to clean up debris in the center of the city after the shelling. Let's start with Svitlana Zhekova. Svitlana, could you please share details about the condition of the House of Scientists? Good afternoon, everyone. We can speak about significant damage to this landmark, to this monument of architecture of national importance. The House of Scientists has been also included to UNESCO list. But despite that, our enemy attacked this area. As for our building, the historical building, we cannot speak about some significant damage to architecture and to the construction structure. But to be more precise, so the building has not been ruined, but every room in the building, every window, every door, every ceiling are damaged, even the furniture. So it is really painful to see the aftermath of the attack. Of course, we will clean up everything, but today we need to be careful. We need to preserve everything following the procedure, not to make mistakes in the process of restoration. Because despite the fact that the war is ongoing, we want to restore the whole building, which is very popular not only among Odessa residents, but among Ukrainians, and it is well known abroad. The owner of the building is the trade union of teachers and scientists of Ukraine, and now we have the head of the regional department, Ms. Kornichuk. Could you add something now? Good afternoon. I want to say that we own the building. This is the collective ownership, but we don't have such type of ownership anymore. But de facto, it is owned by scientists and of Odessa, resident of Odessa Oblast, of Odessa region. It is a terrifying event, not only for us, but all scientific circles of Ukraine, because colleagues from all over Ukraine have visited this building at some point of time, and also our colleagues from abroad. Now we are doing everything possible to preserve what is still there. And we're also trying to involve all our subordinate organizations and all Odessa residents who are willing to support us to restore this landmark for the House of Scientists to be able to host events and the teachers and the scientists from Odessa and the whole of Ukraine. Lyubov, thank you very much. We will come to you later, perhaps with questions. Maximian Pogorelovsky, the floor is yours. Could you share details about the consequences consequences of attack of the cathedral. As far as I understand, there was a meeting of the committee to discuss the future of the cathedral and what is the condition of the underground church, which is beneath the cathedral. The cathedral is heavily damaged because they hit the center of the cathedral. This is the important part, the altar of the cathedral, and it is no more there. So the attack was so powerful that the wall was damaged near the altar, and the columns have been destroyed, which is over the central part of the cathedral, and the missile just got underground. There are 2 levels underground that were hit by that missile, and we stored the images there. And you know that there is the Kasperevska icon of the Mother of God, and it was in the epicenter of the explosion, but somehow it was not damaged. And there is the danger of the collapse of the other parts of the cathedral. But the relics were in the underground cathedral. That was the relics of Innocenti. And we remember from the history of our city that Innocenti went to the coastline of our city with the mentioned image of the Mother of God, and thanks to that, the city was protected by the fog. And it was not shelled and destroyed. The relics were underground, and thanks God they were intact. The committee allowed to have ceremonies there, to have sermons there, but we need to restore that because the windows were destroyed. Thank you. Perhaps we will come back to you later with more questions. Natalia, now the question is to you. Let's discuss other destructions in Odessa, not only that night, but during the nights before. How would you assess it? And now it is known that 20 architectural monuments have been damaged. And one of the speakers has already mentioned that UNESCO included the whole historical center of the city in its heritage list. And we see a lot of buildings that have been damaged. And for example, and even the house of Chizevich in the military descent have been destroyed. And the historical monuments and landmarks near that house have their windows destroyed or damaged, but we can restore that. As for more details, this is the question to experts, and we should expect the expert scrutiny in the nearest future. But we know that the house of Chizevich have been fully damaged. The house of Zabudovsky, Stolarsky, musical schools, the house of Pomer have been damaged. And recently we discussed that after the repair, the house got different colors, not authentic colors. But perhaps we could come back to restoring this building and bring its authentic colors back. The cathedral, and which is a disputable one, but I believe that historical centers should be preserved. And an authentic center should be preserved to the maximum extent possible. So this is the cathedral now has the new building because it was restored after full destruction during Soviet times. And their attitudes to it is different, but our enemies all the time say that they can repeat, and this is what they did now, because in 1936 the cathedral was destroyed, and thanks to Odessa residents, we have the new building of the cathedral in its old place, authentic place. But we hope that we will preserve the historical part of the city. Thank you. Eleonora, you were among those volunteers who helped to clean up debris and who helped, who provided like mental support to the Odessa residents that were were in the center of that event. Overnight, after the cathedral was hit, I just went to Preobrazhenska Street, and no one was allowed to go near to the cathedral by the state emergency service. So I helped locals just to clean up a window from Preobrazhenska Street. And then, after I had a short sleep at night, I went to the cathedral. There was no necessity in additional support, and I went to Preobrazhenska Street, the houses 1, 2, 3. So there were no representatives of the police or the state emergency service. So we just waited for them, but then we decided to clean up everything by ourselves to support local residents. So we used shelves and we just did everything possible to clean up the debris. We put it in the sacks, etc. Thank you. And now we can give floor to our journalists here, so you can ask questions. Just raise your hand.
Go on, yes. Use the mic, turn it on, and go to the mic for the question to go to the live translation.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for organizing this interesting meeting.
Thanks. Just a second for everybody to... Ви всі готові слухати трансляцію? Прошу.
Thank you. My name is Lorenzo Cremonesi, writing for the national Italian daily Corriere della Sera. By the way, there was an Italian delegation from the parliament the day of the attack to the cathedral, and we went to see the effect. It was terrible. So I have a question specifically, actually two questions, but let's ask the first one. To the Maxim Pogorelyovsky.
Maximian, tak, proszę.
Maximian. And the question is this one, because I went there on different occasions in the last days. I would like to understand, this cathedral, the priest of this cathedral, is decided to stay with the Ukrainian Patriarchate or with the Moscow Patriarchate? Because I still don't understand, and this is the main question. Then I have another question follow. Thank you.
I would like to say that you should not offend us saying about Moscow Patriarchy. And I understand your question and the narratives that you imply. We're Ukrainian Orthodox Church that is fully autonomous. And we have Thomas that was provided to us in 1990. And our church was registered the year before Ukraine gets its independence as the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. There was no Moscow Patriarch. We are Ukrainian Orthodox Church. That's why it was unclear for you to understand whether we are Ukrainian Orthodox Church or not. But you've seen our position, our attitude to our country, and you can see how much has been already done by Odesa diocese for our military, for our victory. There are a lot of videos that you can see and on all the media of Odesa diocese of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and you can see that every Sunday we send our aid to the front line. And we have the same position. We always support Ukrainian people. We pray for the victory of our country, and we do everything possible, not only through these sermons, but also with physical support. And this is just to anticipate other questions of the journalists. Please don't name Moscow Patriarchy. It doesn't exist in Ukraine. It's somewhere in Russia. They have their own narratives. we are not related to them. We had the spiritual connection to them before the four as the other Orthodox churches of the world, but now we do not have any relation anymore because of their terrifying position of their church and the representatives of the church.
Fair enough. That I have finally a very clear answer. And so, sir, second question: do you think that the Russian President Putin aimed specifically at the cathedral? I mean, this missile was aimed to destroy your cathedral? Was a plan? Was clearly, or it was a mistake? Thank you.
As a priest, the Christian, I cannot condemn anyone. But as a human being, as a Ukrainian, as a live being, I can analyze the situation. And we can see that during that terrifying night, the most missiles hit not only the houses of people, but landmarks, architectural monuments, which are very important for Ukrainians and for Odessa residents. And we can see the resonance in Ukraine, in the world, after shelling of the mentioned constructions and buildings, especially the Savior Transfiguration Cathedral. And I think that that was done on purpose for our people to be terrified, to break the spirit of our nation, to break the spirit of Odessa residents, to intimidate them. But as we can see, that the response is quite contrary, quite different. So now all Odessa residents are united to clean up the debris, to help with the work in the cathedral. And now all the time, day and night, we have people there. So people just cry there because it is difficult to deal with the tragedy without crying. They pray there, and Odessa residents will always remember that. And we can see the spiritual condition of people as priests after the tragedy. And there are people in Ukraine who had their doubts. I think that it is now clear for them now. The situation is clear for them now. Thank you. And the next question, please.
To the speakers, but yeah, if no, якщо немає, пані Світлана.
If there are no questions, I have the question to Svitlana about the House of Scientists. The second phase of this war started in February last year. I have a question about conservation of the art pieces that you have, and I know that some of Odessa museums have at least hidden their art pieces or taken them to other places. You do not have, you're not a museum, but you have some old pieces of furniture. We have the Cultural and Scientific Center. We do not have a museum license. So all the items that we have in our expositions are not related to national values. And a lot of things have been bought in different shops. So we conserved our old piano and this soft furniture for them not to be damaged. And that's why all these items are intact. And we have some small damages to chairs, but this like minor damages. The walls have been heavily damaged. Everything's covered with glass now. And with metal, ceiling, walls, windows. This is what was damaged in the forest. We have a question from the floor. Irina, the floor is yours. I have a question to Maximian Pogorellovsky. And sorry for using maybe not that religious terms, and all sermons are usually ended up with some thankful words, saying that we should pray for. Do you talk about the head of the Russian Orthodox Church that gave his blessing for this war? I'm talking about Kirill. Since the 24th of February, when the full-scale invasion started, we have not been mentioning that person, not only in Odesa diocese, but in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church all over Ukraine. And of course, on the occupied territories, there are services of the Russian Federation who just use tortures against priests. And now we can talk about this, and everyone knows about this. And those priests on the occupied of the territory are forced to mention the superior of Cathedral of Orthodox Ukrainian Church, and they could not mention Onufri. We, in our sermons, we just mention our superior, Onufri. But before the 24th of February, we just follow the traditions that we inherited from the Soviet times. And of course, we need time to change that. And you know about our relations between our countries. A lot of relatives live both in Ukraine and Russia. But on the 24th of February, that connection was ruined for the upcoming thousand years. And as a result, in our church, we do not mention Kirill anymore, even in our prayers. We have the question of our Italian colleague.
Again, I don't want to monopolize, but it's very interesting what you're saying. Thank you. This answer was also very interesting. I have a question to everybody, whoever want to answer. You know, in the international community, among journalists, was common to say that Odessa is a very international, multicultural city, Jewish community, Turkish, etc. History of Italian history is here. But there was the strong pro-Russian, Russophile sentiment. People were talking Russian, etc. Would like to ask you specifically the attacks, these last week attacks. Do you think that change even more the city? I mean, some people even say that Putin is so angry with Ukrainian and with Odessa, which he considered like the pearl of the Russian, that he wants to take revenge. So I would like to ask you, this close Russian connection which this city had, Russian tourists, Russian presence, changed because of the last events? Thank you.
I would like to remind that this is the question to everyone. But if all other speakers want to answer the question, we can do this just one by one. I think that the attitude was changed a long time ago. And that on the 24th of February was like the last drop for those people who had certain doubts, who were under the influence of the Russian propaganda, historical propaganda. Those elements that were always there, the connection between our peoples. So we can see something in common in our history. But all these elements were just fosters to do what Russia Federation is doing now. This is the war against the Ukrainian people and the genocide. And that day did not change the attitude, because the attitude had been changed before, but it just provided more evidence to people and just inspired people for the struggle. So if some people are tired of the war, like before that latest attack on our city, when landmarks and the heart and the spirit of Odessa, the cathedral, were damaged, then that attack gave additional forces and strength to Ukraine and Odessa residents to fight for their victory. Thank you. I can say that I work with a big crowd, with big amount of people. I talk to people as a guide, and we know that the war started not in February, but it started in 2014. And in 2014, Russia started aggression that led to inevitable changes in the attitude of the society. But I cannot do not want to tell you some sweet stories. But still, there is the narrative that Odessa is a Russian city. But when on Sunday we saw those terrible damages, unfortunately, among people, I heard something, and I always tell to my guests that they always use lemons to make lemonade. And there was a huge crowd there in the center who wanted to support, who wanted to sympathize and to make selfies. And among those people, I heard people saying, I had never thought that Russia would attack or bomb Odessa. I cannot understand how it could happen. And I think that these people will still be sure that Odessa is the Russian city, because Russia took a long time to put this in people's heads and people's minds. Odessa is a multinational city, and during the first 30 years since its founding, Odessa spoke French and Italian. But as a result of Russification, we see what we have now. In the 20th century, Odessa was the center of development of Ukrainian culture, of Ukrainian traditions. But then the efforts were taken for Odessa to be turned into a Russian city, and that was in the 20th century. And I want those people who still cannot understand where they live, what country has been destroying Ukraine, Odessa, Kiev, Dnipro, Kherson, the whole of Ukraine, to understand what is the real situation. And if people still don't have answers to their questions, I would like to remind them also, it could be cruel, but I'd like to say that people should address to doctors for examination if they can't see the obvious situation. They continue saying, we cannot have one clear answer to the situation. And, so people who cannot learn the language of their state, these people are guests in this country, or they have some problems, some mental problems. And I want to be sure that our victory will be there, so that our victory is inevitable. The whole world sees the struggle of Ukraine, and I want this narrative to be forgotten, because Odessa is Ukraine. Thank you. I cannot add an historical domain because everything has been clearly explained, but I can say what I see, what I have seen over the last year. And I also grew up in Odessa. My first native language was Russian language, because everyone talked Russian. That was normal. But after what started in 2014 and how it continued last year with the full-scale invasion, I can see how many young people, and not only young people, start talking Ukrainian. This is their conscious choice. First, we should speak about the consumption of Ukrainian content, like films, books, different videos. Then, especially when it comes to young people, they start using Ukrainian in social media, and then they start using Ukrainian as their everyday language. This is soft Ukrainization, so to say. For people who were raised in the Russian society, it is very difficult to switch at once to Ukrainian language. Some people, they manage to do this, and I respect them. But for them, others people, they gradually start talking Ukrainian. I can see this among my relatives, friends, and people I just meet outside. And it is very important, not only shelling, but in general, and really Odessa is Ukraine. Thank you. And I have a question, if you allow. This question is not about Russian and Ukrainian languages, but this is a question about the condition of the cathedral. I've read that you should now destroy the part of the cathedral to restore it from the scratch. Yes, this is true. And today we'll just discuss what part should be destroyed, especially altar, because the place that was hit by the missile should be destroyed to restore it from the scratch. And we should actually examine the conditions and the state of the basement, because the basement actually took the whole strike, because otherwise the buildings surrounding the cathedral would have been destroyed because they are very old, and we could see even a bigger tragedy. A lot of people would have been killed. But the cathedral is like an embodiment of Christ. The cathedral sacrificed itself to save people, and the condition of the building is really very difficult, and we will just decide today what to do with the remnants of altar. And now we need to close the roof of the cathedral to prevent precipitation from getting there, because it could deteriorate the situation. Lubov, are you still with us? Because I have a question to you, if you allow. Yes. Because you're representing the owner of the House of Scientists. So what was the condition of the House of Scientists before the shelling? When it was restored or maintained? Could you share more details for us to have better understanding what is needed to restore the house now? Before the 23rd of July, the House of Scientists was in a rather good condition. We tried to maintain and all the funds that we had were allocated to maintain the House of Scientists, to conduct work to preserve not only the house itself, but also to ensure power and heat supply and water supply. And I think that the House of Scientists was preserved the best when it comes to landmarks in the historical center of Odessa. It was one of the best. As for repair, the overhaul, it was made quite a long time ago. If I'm not mistaken, it was in the 1970s, 1980s, when the House of Scientists was fully reconstructed. Unfortunately, I don't have precise data because I just got the job only 3 years ago. And the facade was fully reconstructed back then. It was restored fully, and every year there were some repairs conducted there. It was in June, in May-June 2023, when we repaired eaves that were a bit damaged, but now it is damaged again. Thank you. If there are no other questions, but we have one more question. I have one more question, but I do not know whom to address it to. Taking into consideration that a lot of buildings are a part of historical area protected by UNESCO, and these buildings are also the national monuments. What should be the procedure of restoration? Whom to coordinate conservation with, and the than the restoration. What is the protocol? What is the procedure? Perhaps you know this information. Thank you. If you allow. We have the following situation now. We do not have any guidelines how to respond to such emergency situations. It would be great if we could be contacted by the certified entities for us to make proper steps, for us not to make mistakes in decision-making process, to collect all the documents, to take pictures of everything what is needed. We have received advice, but from the Charitable Foundation, and I would like to say that I believe that the State Emergency Service should be in contact with the department protecting cultural heritage, because we can see the damages, not as a result of the missile attack, but because the representatives of State Emergency Services just had to deal with closed doors. And so, of course, it would be more convenient if they could get keys and to open the doors, but that was not the case. So they just knocked out the doors, and we just have additional work to do for the restoration. So these things should not be in the future. Eleonora, I can say that yesterday in the morning, I met a representative of UNESCO who said that the damaged houses, which are landmarks, still have debris there, because everything is surrounded now with the signs saying that the Department of Culture will conduct its scrutiny. Maybe this is not the answer to the question, but I would like to remind that there are still residential houses there, and people need our support right now. And I would also like to add something, just a short remark. My colleagues yesterday asked me to bring to the attention of our municipal services that were not involved in cleaning out debris of the house of Chuzevich in Viskovi descent. And as of yesterday, only volunteers were working there, and so that was the request to address our municipal council to provide experts, to provide equipment to deal with the consequences of the destroyal of that house. And like the House of Scientists, the cathedral were like in the spotlight, but these are not the only buildings where help is needed. And the whole Sunday we can see the sound of broken glass. But still, there are other houses that where the assistance is needed. One more short question. Michael, the floor is yours. Michael Vasura, Newsweek Journal magazine, since the 24th of February 2014. How many landmarks and monuments of architecture have been damaged in Odessa, and how many of them were damaged last night? And especially, we're interested in Saturday. If the question is to me, unfortunately, I'm not like an official representative of power. I do not have access to the register. I have the general information, and there was the list of 25 landmarks that was published in mass media. But I'm sure that this is not the full list. That's why we should address this question to officials who have more details and who have access to register of the damaged monuments and landmarks. The question to Maximian Pogorelski, this is a huge tragedy, and we're inspired by the fact that Kasparovska icon was preserved, but there were other relics in the cathedral, the relics of Innocency. And also the remnants of Vorontsov, the Duke Vorontsov and Duchess Vorontsov, and also the icon of Ivar, Mother of God, and also there was the cross, which is a very valuable item, because it was made of ammunition of the soldiers protecting Crimea. Could you share more details about this relics? It is very important for Odessa residents. I've already mentioned that the lower part of the cathedral was not damaged, and this is a miracle in itself. And there was the sarcophagus with the remnants of Duke and Duchess Vorontsov, the Vorontsov family, and so there is no scratch even there. As for icon, Metropolitan Agafangel and has a huge respect to Church and the Mother of God, and both icons were preserved, Kasparovska and Iverska, because there was armored sarcophagus. Only the glass was damaged, but the icons are intact. The cross is also intact, and we need just to renew the pedestal. And the cross, the relics are intact. And I would like to say that we'll remember that in 2010, Metropolitan Volodymyr blessed the cathedral, and Kirill was there. And also he actually presented the icon, and that was the Savior icon. And now we do not know where the present is, because after the explosion, the icon disappeared. And the marble construction is not there anymore. The kiosk is not there anymore, and it is unknown. But Metropolitan says that that gift was not taken by the God, because it was not made through the because of love, but because of the pride. The relics are also intact. There is a big metal sarcophagus there. Thank you very much for our guests, for our audience. Thank you for being with us online. Svitlana, Lubov, thank you very much for being with us. We should stop here because the next briefing will be in 17 minutes. It will be dedicated to the maritime navigation in the Black Sea. We'll have the British expert who will tell us more about this. Please stay tuned, and if you want to cover the damage to Odessa, we'll gladly share the context of our today's guests. Please cover this strategy.